right.
Hi. Welcome, 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 everyone. I am so glad you're here. You are on another episode of Ask an Agent Anything, where every Tuesday at 2 Mountain Standard Time, we like to bridge the gap between investor and agent and all the ways we can work together to get further faster. I am here with the fabulous Renee. How's it going today, Renee?
I'm good. As I've said in the last couple of weeks, I'm kind of doing a summer vacation, a work vacation. So the background changes all the time. I got to keep you guys on your toes. It's like, where's Renee now? But here's the beauty of technology, and I hope we get into this a little bit with our guest, is that, nowadays, particularly being an agent, you can actually be virtual. You can actually take your business on the road if you set it up that way. And so I'm testing myself to see how that's going to go. But other than that, I'm fabulous. I'm having a great summer, and you look summery in a tank top.
I'm holding on to the last bits of summer I can up here in the mountains of Colorado because it's already starting to smell of fall, which has got me antsy. I barely had any summer, so I'm holding on to the little bits I can. And for everybody that's joining us, thank you. I'm always glad that you're willing to spend some time with us. Today, we have a really, really fun guest and a fun topic. But first, I want to introduce one of my all-time favorite agents. We are on the phone every week talking about deals, talking about buyers, talking about sellers, and sometimes just talking about life. But this is the fabulous Angela in Denver, Colorado. Angela, thanks for taking some time to hang out with us today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. This is actually really exciting for me to join both of you on your podcast here. And then, I kind of stumbled into being a unicorn agent by accident. It wasn't my plan in life. It wasn't what I was expecting. I just got into the situations where I kept wanting to know more information. And before I knew it, I ended up working with all of the more unique property opportunities that are out there, not just straight retail buyers and sellers.
I love that. The first time, I still remember the conversation where I gave you the word unicorn, where I was like, oh, no, we're unicorns. We're the agents that understand investing and we're helping investors. And you were like, yes, finally a word that resonates. I look at these. Wonderful. Well, today, as always, we invite our guests to participate in the conversation, to join us, bring questions, use your expertise. But for the most part, it's fireside chat mode. We're talking about anything and everything. And I think we have a sort of focus today on some of the main topics at hand, which is that the MLS rules and regulations are going to be changing and shifting by the 17th. So you really have kind of a nose to the grindstone as to some of those shifts and changes because you're having to implement them. And I think it's going to be really great to just, pull apart your brain. But before we do, just tell everybody what you do, what you're focused on now, just kind of give them the full rundown of all the awesomeness in your life.
So I hold both a real estate license as well as an MLO mortgage license. And typically what I'm focusing on is inherited homes. I had the unfortunate experience of having someone in my very close family pass away. And I underestimated the amount of stress that is involved in that until I went through the scenario. And so I have discovered that one of the places where I have the ability to really lend some empathy to the process is when dealing with clients that have those inherited homes. Not only because I understand the real estate piece of it, but I also understand the emotional stuff that comes with going through somebody else's property and all of that. And so I found that that's a place where I really kind of bring more to the table than many other agents do. And then a secondary one is being able to look at an ugly house and say, here's what that house needs. Now I just have to find the right buyer for that property, because looking at an ugly house isn't something that every agent can do and figure out what to do with it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right.
And then on the mortgage side, I got my mortgage license because I got sick and tired of not being able to tell my buyers they had stupid lenders.
Ouch.
And they needed to go find somebody better. So I went and got a license just so I can literally say, hey, here's what your lender is doing that is not working for you, and you need to find somebody. else. Here are some recommendations, or find someone on your own, but this is where you're being misled and or misinformed.
Mm.
Ooh, there's a lot to unpack there.
Right.
I have the fortune of having somebody very close to me in my life be a seasoned mortgage broker for 20, almost 25 years, I think, 24, 25 years, long enough. And what she's seeing is just a lot of, it's not maybe totally illegal, because I'm not here to throw anybody under the bus, but very unscrupulous ways of getting business. A lot of the bait and switch, folks are out here, they're hurting. And that's kind of a big topic of what we'll talk about, not just in the lending industry, but also as agents, right? They're not really ebbing and flowing with what the availability is, or maybe they didn't have the foresight to see that it's not always good times in the real estate business. There's always opportunity, but it's challenging, and we're kind of in a challenging mode, but man, you cut your teeth on it, right? When the chips are down. Yeah.
I think for like the layman who's entering this conversation, and then maybe they'd work with you on more of a traditional side, that premise is almost like unfathomable. Like, how could a mortgage broker, somebody who's like there to build the ability for someone to buy a home, by qualifying them, be somebody that could be underhanding? And so I think it is a nice reminder that there's good and bad in every industry. And it's really about knowing the right questions to ask and right direction. What were you noticing you were advising your clients of most, is like just a little evergreen takeaway for anybody that might be passing by this?
The biggest thing that short little mini history. When I left the corporate world back in around 2003 to 2005, I worked for a very short period of time for a lender. And that was back when lending was the wild, wild west here in Colorado. There were no rules about anything. So, if you pushed enough loans through a certain company, you could get a trip or the various bonuses. So I've literally seen the worst that Colorado has to offer. Since getting my license more recently, one of the reasons I did it is what I was seeing mortgage people do was they were misleading people on timeline. They were undercalculating cost at closing. And I knew they were undercalculated because I was seeing those net sheets, right? And so then all of a sudden you get to your time window before closing when they have to give them the final net sheet and the numbers had changed drastically, or they had 30 days to close. I knew the paperwork was in, and suddenly they're getting told, oh, well, we're not sure if we're going to be able to close on time. You're going to have to move your date out. Knowing that depending on where their lock was on their mortgage, they were at risk of losing their rates, right? And so those were all the things that weren't being shared with them, that because I wasn't licensed, I couldn't have those specific conversations. I could only have general conversations of, hey, this doesn't look right. Hey, you need to challenge this. Hey, I really think you need a new lender, because 4 weeks or 4.5 weeks is more than enough to close a loan if you are truly doing a conventional loan. You're not doing something strange. You're a W-2 employee. And as we all know, the more of an independent person you are with your business, the more complicated your loan becomes. But for the most part, there's a lot of stuff that can be closed in that 30-day window. And so when you start getting told by lenders that it can't get closed, for me, that starts throwing up red flags of what's going on behind the scenes. And many times it was just a disorganized lender. I'll be completely honest.
I find that in most situations where a business is letting you down, or a person who's standing as a business, it's disorganization. I could say that on the realtor side, all day, every day. And I've never put these pieces together, but I'm curious if you see it this way, that you have a case of I could do that better, because you also have entered into the investment space and done it better. I've seen you come into the investment side, contact sellers, talk to them on both a listing and a cash sale, and explain it in ways that other agents, I've been banging my head up against a wall to get them to understand. So I kind of see that in your personality of seeing these kinks and these things that have happened in the real estate industry and being like, oh, I could do that better.
It's not so much that I have that moment of I could do that better as it
Mm.
is I have that moment of this person is being failed by the process.
Mm.
And how do you get them what they need?
I like that much better.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, at the end of the day, does it really boil down to I could do it better? Perhaps, but that's not what's going off in my head at the time. What's going off for me is the alarm bells of, hey, this client isn't getting what they deserved or asked for or being told. How do we get them to that place?
Okay, with that distinction, and I'm so glad you made that distinction because that does feel more in line with your heart of it too, is how do you see these shifts in MLS regulations just on a whole and a broader space? Because with the things we're talking about from the mortgage side, it's like, well, regulation is helpful there because, you know, we don't want people to just funnel so many mortgages one direction so that they can go on a yacht. Like we want it to be fair. So how do you see these shifts in general?
I think they're long overdue in some ways. While the current system truly makes it much easier for buyers to buy a home, it does put a burden on the seller, right? And so one of the things that's gone on is I think we got very complacent about talking about fees. And for lack of a better way to put it, I think as agents, we weren't always necessarily being as conservative as we could have been in the fiduciary side and how their money was being spent in terms of commissions. And so I think this is going to force us not only to ask to be paid what we're worth if we are representing the seller, but I think it's also going to force us as the seller's representative to be more discerning about how their money gets spent if they are offering to pay for some of the commission on the buyer side.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of it being the situation where if you didn't put out a minimum percentage on the MLS, you were less likely to get your house looked at. I think this is going to cause a whole lot more negotiation. I think the flip side of that is, I think buyer's agents are going to become much more discerning about the clients they take on and making sure that they're qualified. They're not just showing houses before people get qualified, because let's be honest, that's a monstrous time sinkhole for many agents until you get to the point where you're comfortable asking a customer, have you been qualified by a lender?
Mm-hmm.
And I've known dozens of agents who will show houses to anybody who has a pulse.
That's such a huge waste
Yeah,
of time.
it's
Which,
interesting.
when you
It's
want to
not-
go look at houses as an agent is great. But in terms of looking at your dollar value of time, really is not the best way to be spending your time.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's also going to force agents to learn how to negotiate commission from their buyers when the buyers know that they're potentially on the hook for it. But it's also going to force agents to learn how to negotiate to get paid what they're worth.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you're going to end up seeing this kind of bifurcation in the industry, where the really good agents who know how to negotiate are not only going to negotiate from the buyer's good commissions, they're also going to figure out how to negotiate and get it paid for by the seller. And then you're going to have this group of agents who's going to discount everything they do. And you're going to see these really low price commissions that are also going to be reflective of the amount of service that is getting offered to the buyer.
Yeah.
Mm.
Kind of like what we've seen. I have a prediction that my crystal ball says that it's going to be something like a Purple Bricks or even a Redfin to a degree, you know, that school of thought where they're trying to kind of discount the commission, but get the same full service. And I just have never seen that, you know, not in any type of retail or really any type of service. It's kind of like one or the other. It's not both. And there's constantly, you know, corporations or companies, you know, coming after our commission, so to speak. But I've never really seen it pop off. And actually my dad was in real estate as a builder in the 70s. And he flat told me, Renee, I've been seeing this since the 70s. There's always discounted something, whether it's a broker or a listing, whatever. So I think this is just the first time in a long time. Now, mind you, NAR has gotten involved, but that we've really seen this. And so anytime there's a shift in the industry, people for the most part don't like change, and especially when it has to do with their paycheck. But really, I just say get better, get more, skill up, get more skill. Like, don't get mad, get creative. That's one of my biggest slogans. And so we're just dealing with, the kick up and the whys, and now you got to go to work. We've actually gotten paid very, very handsomely in real estate without having a whole lot of barrier to entry. It's one of those industries where you can kind of fog a mirror and get your license. So now you got to step up, you got to step up. So I say amen. But what I predict is that there's going to be discount brokers that come along that say, oh, for $5,000, we'll do, we'll be your buyer's agent for $5,000. And it's probably going to hurt the consumer more, but we're going to have to combat that. So not only a possible discount on the seller side, like another Redfin coming down the pike, but those type of discounted buyers, I guarantee it's coming to us.
And the other place the buyers are going to get hurt is on the lending side.
Okay.
Because for some of your lower income buyers, they can't include the commission cost as part of their loan. It can't be rolled in. And so your people who need the most help are going to be the ones that are most susceptible to these discount brokerages, because commission can't be rolled in as a closing cost unless the mortgage industry changes the rules, which means the federal government changes the rules about what can be included in closing cost. And that's kind of what the mortgage industry right now is thinking may happen down the road, is that some of those rules may be adjusted with that specifically in mind.
Well, it remains to be seen, right? Like this goes back to what we hear a lot of adages of: control the controllables. So, we're sort of pontificating the what ifs, and most of this is out of our control, the federal government or NAR, or, there's just, I'm not saying we have to sit on the sidelines and not bring our pitchforks in the street and have a voice. I just saw today, I can't remember, I think it's Minnesota or Michigan state that begins with an M. Looks like they're, countersuing, NAR. Anyway, there's going to be a whole lot of that going on. But the changes are coming, right? So what are you going to do in the interim? And I say skill up. And what does that look like? For a lot of people, it's getting into coaching. I've always believed in having a skills and scripts partner, so you can practice on your partner and not on your client. So it's really like getting into the trenches like that. Have you done anything like that in your career to behind the scenes, make sure that you know what to say and how to say it when all this, not just with the NAR thing, like in general? Have you always?
I laugh because I know she's queen of the like upgrade. Like, this woman has so many certifications.
It's kind of stupid.
I lose it. So, anyway, back to you.
So I'm kind of an information junkie. So for example, I spent 4 whole days trying to teach myself how to use AI and automate a whole bunch of things for my real estate business, because I was sick of not knowing and don't really want to pay somebody else to do it for me, because that doesn't help me. So I do spend a lot of time kind of looking at, okay, how do I do this? Or if I'm making a lot of phone calls and I, say done 6 calls in a row and I'm hitting the same roadblock, it's like, okay, there's something I'm not doing right here. And it might be a call to Corianne going, so I just got hung up on for the 4th time in a row and told I was an asshat. This is what I've been saying. And she'll come back and say, well, yeah, or wow, you're just having a bad day today.
Right.
Right. And so it's those kinds of things. So yes, I do coaching. I actually have done sales coaching at different times before kind of getting into real estate. And what was really funny is kind of what I learned from that is that whole concept of ask questions. Mm-hmm. Don't show up and throw up on people, but ask questions, because that gets you closer to where you want to be. And ask questions that lead you into people's pain points or pleasure points, because that's how you're going to move them closer to sale, is by solving one of those 2 items.
Good. So you're on it. You heard it here, right? So the seasoned agents, or even if you're starting new, really consider, if you cannot afford coaching, I think now with social media, that's a great place to start. Go on, if you're traditional, you can do Mike Ferry, Tom Ferry type of stuff. There's lots of traditional retail coaches that way. Corianne and I have, purchased, which by the way, I've done both of those coaches, Mike and Tom Ferry. And they're just the ones that people know. You can go on their sites, you can go on their other coaching sites. Probably Mike Ferry, because he's the one that really started real estate coaching for real estate agents, I think in the late 80s, somewhere in there. So he does it more traditionally. Don't try to get out of this. I think finding a way to better your communication is not just going to help you in your work equity. It's going to help you in your life. So you kind of get a 1-2 punch, right? So if it's discouraging and you don't like the words coaching or scripting or any of that stuff, just consider it a master's in communication, because that's really what you're looking to do, is how to better communicate with people so that they come to their own conclusions for the questions that they're asking, and you're the one guiding them along the way.
Well, what I love about everything you just shared is I think it comes with twofold. You gave us a level up tip that literally you could start today and you will do better in life. And that is the show up, don't throw up on them line that I have now put at the bottom of the screen. Because if you're able to truly listen, like, what is our goals here? And if you don't know the goals, then ask. And if you need to further is this a pain? Is this a pleasure? Like, what is motivating us? What do we need? And you're able to actually listen to those answers, you're already leaps and bounds above so many of the other asshats that are out there in the world. And I think that's huge. And then the second thing that I think you brought, which is, it takes more time to do, but is also so important, is to go, what's stopping me right now in my business? Like, where's the holdback, and who knows how to do it better than I do? Like, you use me as a resource all the time when it comes to like the agent side, the investor side of things. Like, how are we making that transition over to more flipping investment thinking? And I use you in the exact reverse, where I'm like, I'm about to go into a listing appointment and I've never had a presentation, and please send me one. And you're like, yeah. And we have a very open form of communication on both sides, so that we can share each other's notes, and we find somebody who knows it better and then ask them how they're doing it. And most of the time they'll tell you.
Yeah. Well, and I think one of the things that really plays into that, and why you and I have worked so well back and forth, is I've gotten to the point in my career where I'm not afraid to give people my stuff. Because I'm not worried that they're going to steal it. I'm not worried that they're going to use it. I'm not worried that they're going to use it as part of their conversation with their clients. Because by letting you have, for example, a copy of my listing presentation or my buyer's presentation, you weren't stealing a client from me. You were just doing better at your client. And I think that there are so many agents that are so worried about, if I share what I have and I share what I know, somebody's going to steal it from me and steal my clients from me. The reality is, at the end of the day, the clients I resonate with are not the same clients that Corianne is going to register with, or that Renee is going to bond with, right? We all have slightly different vibes, and we all attract slightly different buyers and sellers. And so I think that that's one of the biggest things that holds most agents back, is that fear of sharing, because they're afraid they're going to lose something by sharing.
And it is fear, right? So what is fear? Is an acronym, is the false evidence appearing real. Like, that isn't something I just made up. That's sort of been floating around for a lot of years. And so, it's almost like check yourself. That's the other one, right? So don't show up and don't throw up, but check yourself. Because, we make up these funky stories, but how about you took it and you twisted it? So if the thought came to your mind, like, oh, Angela's going to steal my client, right? That was some version of that thought. But then you stopped yourself and you said, wait a minute, what would it look like if we shared this? And just allowing yourself to open up your mind, even open up your heart, but like open up your mind and open up that internal dialogue, and even do some writing about it. And what has showed up, say for me as an example, right, is that there have been times where I just know I didn't resonate with the client. Now, I could have pushed the deal, meaning they were buyer client, maybe they were really, really young and first time buyers, and truth be told, I don't have a lot of patience for that. That's not really my avatar of client in my heart of hearts. There's nothing wrong with them. They're just out here trying to buy a house. So I know, other agents that I know that they would resonate better for that. That is their person. They love it when they're this sweet young couple and they're trying to buy and they have all the patience in the world. And I gave up, part of my commission because I wanted that person to have an experience. And I just think that, I still got paid a little bit because it was more of a referral at that point. And I did a really beautiful handoff. And you know what? That client, if you will, got the better service.
Yeah.
And there have also been times when I was young, earlier in my career, where I kind of shoved a square peg in a round hole. And at the end of it, I got my paycheck and they got their keys. But I just felt like that just didn't feel good. So I think you kind of have to check yourself about, are you doing it for the paycheck? Or are you doing it because you want to be in this business and this business has longevity and it's about relationships?
Well, it doesn't feel good for anybody. Like, honestly, commission breath doesn't smell good to the person that has it. It doesn't smell good to the person that has to receive it. And that's really what it is. It's like this salesy commission breath of like, please choose me, please choose me.
And
when
everybody knows.
Yeah.
Everybody knows, unfortunately, right? Like, you could be the neighbor watching that agent walk in and you're like, commission breath. And I think in a lot of ways, it's about finding the people you vibe with, knowing your crowd and who you're actually there and have the right intention to attract those people and say no to the others. I remember the first time I ever said no to a listing. And I think everybody in my brokerage and sphere kind of lost it that day because they were just like, what are you doing? Why would you say no to such a thing? And I was like, I got to refer it out to somebody. I made a good friendship in regards to that. That lady now almost like was indebted to me in the way that she responded because I gave her that listing. And I think I was so much happier for it because I could tell that client would have driven me insane. Like, I really would have lost it. But the other listing agent who took it on, it was a much better match and she was so happy. And really, I think, man, if we could bring what I know the investment side understands a little bit better, but which is like, if we share the pie, we all get to eat. How enjoyable is that? If we could get the agents to understand that it works the same way for them, like share the pie, have collaborations, know other agents, man, we would live in a better world. And I can only hope that as we move towards that split that you're talking about, Angela, that the ones that are dying off towards the little brokerage fees and driving themselves all around Denver and the terrible Denver traffic, the ones that go off that cliff, I can only hope are the ones that were holding us back. And that the people who are truly negotiating and understand those premises are ready and willing to truly start working together. Because we're going to do better, so much better for our sellers and our buyers and our people out there.
Well, and I think that that's true, right? When you look at the market and you look at the agents that are out there, how does this split out? And the example that kind of came to mind, this is kind of a crazy example. I took my daughter shopping to get ready to go to college later this year. And we went to a boutique store because she needed some business clothes because she'll have to be doing some presentations in appropriate business attire. Well, the store we went to, as we're walking through the store, the sales ladies would come up and take her clothes and take them to the back and hanging them in a dressing room, right? And this is something she's not experienced before as an 18-year-old because they shop at H&M and Target and those types of places. She's like, Mom, what are they doing with my clothes? And I'm like, don't worry about it. They've got a room for you. So she gets back there and she finds a room with her name on it. She's like, Mom, they've got my name on the door. And I'm like, yep. That's why they asked for your name, hun. She's like, is this what grown-up shopping is like? And I'm like, it can be. But this is the difference between a boutique experience and a mass market experience. Yeah. She's like, I could get used to shopping like this. But I think you're going to see the same kind of thing happen in real estate. But instead of it being around, are you a multi-million-dollar home or a home that's under, say, $500,000? Instead of it being a price point bifurcation, I think you're going to see it be a services bifurcation. And yes, price point is going to play into that some, but no matter where you are, what market you're in, you're going to have some people with very expensive houses that are going to choose the discount brokerage. You're going to have some people with less expensive houses who are going to go the boutique route because they want the service and they want the all-inclusive assistance with getting their home sold and knowing that it's done right.
All right. I think this is the time for my small soapbox commercial break, if you will. And I'm going to talk to some people that I know show up and watch Ask an Agent Anything. And most of them, honestly, are wholesalers, or they might be flippers, or there's something like that. And they're on the phone and they're calling and they're reaching out to agents. And one of the things that they spend most of their time doing is talking to bad agents and not good agents. And let me tell you, I also spend my time on the phone calling and talking to agents, and I will leave the conversation if it's not headed in the direction that Angela is. Like, I would talk to 30 people and say bye to them to get one Angela. Like, and that's the goal, is to go out there and to find people that you enjoy working with, you enjoy talking to, that have the same mindset as you do, as we take care of people. And you only need a relatively small circle of people that are headed in that direction to have the right momentum. And meeting Angela, which I think was almost a year ago on the phone, just about, which is just crazy. I did let go of other agents. I started to recognize the difference. I started to go, wait a second, they're not willing to call a seller. Angela will call any seller I give her a phone number to find out if she can take care of them. She's not scared of that. And so I just want to remind everybody out there that's in that investment world that is calling agents, that you are vetting the other person on the side of the phone as to somebody you want to work with, who you want to make money for. Like, one of my many goals is to be able to add money into Angela's pocket. By the way, I'm also excited that that is going to a smart college student who's going to art school, another woo-woo. Like, yes. There's so much synchronicity that we have that makes us want to go do deals, that makes it exciting to work with each other. And I just want to remind people that those people are out there, not just the ones who are like, stop on a text message, or no, why would I work with you? Or my buyer's list is big enough. Like, just be like, okay, cool. I hope your day gets better. And go find an Angela. They're out there.
Well, thank you.
End of my commercial.
Yeah, they are out there, because guess what? You know, for those of you who are on the call, or on the show rather, like, all of us are that. So here's the irony, right? Like, Corianne, you found Angela, Angela, you found Corianne, right? The universes collided. And the reality is, you heard what Corianne just said. You know, you did 30 calls and 29s were a maybe or a no. And that is just the par for the course of sales. Yep. I do think that there's a number of people, like, there's a new generation coming in. Angela and I are probably kind of in the same age bracket, but there's a new generation of folks coming in that you actually have to talk to people. It's not just AI, you know, or it's not just an Amazon fulfillment. Like, this is still human beings. And so it takes some going through. And so whether you have AI helping you do that, you still have to go through, you know, the process of, and that is just something that I think patience is really a virtue in this business. And assuming that it's going to come quicker than it does is really set people up for a hard reality in real estate sales. So making sure you give yourself that, you know, lag time, that leeway, if you will. If you need to join a team, if you need to collaborate like Corianne and Angela, you know, do it. It's okay to share the pie, as Corianne said, you know, rather than just keeping it all for yourself and not knowing what you're doing and feeling alone, because it can be a very lonely business for sure.
And that's what I was just going to jump in and say is, you know, if you're at a brokerage or on a team or someplace where you feel like you're an island, go make a friend. You know, make those agent to agent phone calls and find a friend who might be working someplace different, but is going in the same direction. Because I think that knowing that you're not alone is massively helpful for helping you stay accountable to yourself and doing the things you need to do to move your business forward. Because those are the people that you're going to be able to pick up the phone today and go, so this is the only thing I accomplished today. And they're going to go, fantastic. How are you going to fix that problem tomorrow?
Yeah.
And sometimes we need that kind of kick in the pants, right? To be like, okay, you've had your 30 seconds to wallow. How are you going to take care of this?
Yeah.
And if you don't have a friend in the industry, and it doesn't have to be a real estate agent, it could be a lender, right? Because lenders have the same problems we have. You know,
they do, right?
I mean, and we're after the same client pool, more or less, especially if you're on the buy side. And so, but go make a friend, because I think that just helps you stay accountable. It helps you stay on track. And you don't have to share everything and do everything the same. You just have to know enough about each other to help each other get over the humps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's the reality, share, right? Really come from that place. Like, kind of check yourself if you're more of an individualistic person or a lone wolf type. There's no way that you're making 100% of anything. And now you might get the most of it if you're doing the deal by yourself, but there's no way to scale a business without people. And eventually you're going to have to share some piece of that pie. So maybe get used to it a little sooner than later. And that just is saying about the commission, because I know people get stuck on that. Angela, what I hear you saying is also literally go find a friend. It could be anybody, the home warranty person. Like, the home warranty person I always used was amazing and fun. And she lived on a houseboat and did all this fun stuff. She's just a cool person, right? So there was that. And I would encourage people not to be such a lone wolf, and don't get too stuck on. If you are such an entrepreneur that that it is in your blood and your name has to be on the shingle and you're a leader and that's just how you came out, then so be it. But you know what? There's a lot of places that's just as important, that maybe your name isn't on the shingle, but you're going to be a support to the greater whole. And so kind of check yourself while you're, finding your place within this industry, because really there's everyone's trying to be a chief when really there's more Indians. And so it's okay. You don't always have to have your name on the shingle, and you'll make just as much money and you'll probably have more fun because you don't have all that weight on your shoulders. So it's just some food for thought, for the audience to consider.
Because leaders need friends too. You just got to pick the right kind of friends. And it's funny, I get to sit here with two of my friends, and I can actually say, oh yeah, no, that's how it works, because I will go to Angela and I'll be like, I feel like I might be wasting my time on some coaching calls. And she's like, what are you learning on those coaching calls? And I'm like, oh, stuff I already know. And she goes, then yep, you're wasting some time. You should cut some of that out. You know what? Why don't you just text me tonight how many hours you gained this week by cutting something out? And then I do that. And then I go to Renee and I'm like, guess what I did? I'm so proud that I cut out these hours, and this is a real live example. And I go back and I report to Angela, and I've got Renee over here high-fiving me. And like those kinds of situations is what makes the difficult aspects of this business okay and fun and collaborative, and moves it more in a, we are attracting these things because we're creating together not only the lives that we love and being able to send our kids to college and like do these things using real estate. It's just, I'm grateful. I guess the only way to end that ramble is to say I'm grateful for both of you, that really is how our relationship works here. For everybody else that's tuning in to the mini soapboxes I'm bringing, because I'm excited. I'm here with my friends today. I'd like to know you're here. Roll call, please. If you're paying attention to this live right now, I want to see you in the chat telling me where you're tuning in from, what you want to learn from Angela, what questions you still have about the MLS regulation rules and changes. Please tell me you're here. In the meantime, let's kind of turn back around to MLS regulations and a little bit about what is going on in the nitty-gritty there. My understanding is that there might be like such big shifts that some brokerages are not going to allow their brokers to basically do any kind of broker-to-broker commission agreements. Have you heard of this, Angela? What do we do to work around this? Like, talk to me. So
I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing because literally that was the topic of conversation at our brokerage meeting this morning. So the deal is, there is a contract out there in Colorado that's being recommended by one of the top lawyers who does stuff in the real estate industry. And effectively, this contract is a brokerage to brokerage contract. And we at EXP are being told that they would prefer that we do not sign this. And the reason is EXP's lawyers and EXP on the whole is looking at this contract here in Colorado and saying, hey, this violates the idea behind the NAR lawsuit, which is stuff was going on behind the buyer and seller's backs. without full transparency. And so this brokerage to brokerage contract is another piece of paper. Exactly. It's doing the same thing because it's a piece of paper to which the buyer and seller are not a party to this piece of paper. So while we've been told if it looks like it's going to blow up the deal, go talk to the managing broker, we are also being told, hey, we'd prefer you not sign this. And here's why. And it's because there's concerns about the transparency aspect of it. And I think it's a wise move on their part because there's no reason you can't turn around and in your traditional offer down in additional provisions say the buyer will pay X amount to, the seller will pay X amount to the buyer's agent. And then it's fully transparent to everyone what's going on.
Yeah.
And that would be written in the contract, like the buy and sale agreement?
Yeah, written right into the contract. And so then it becomes transparent. It becomes an item that can be negotiated like all the other items, right? So let's say I listed my house for $500,000. You offered me $490,000. I can now come back as the seller and say, no, $495,000, and I'm only paying 2% commission to your agent. Because it becomes a fully negotiable item.
However, where does that stand? And I have to go back and re-listen from my broker with the buyer broker agreement, because my understanding is that you're writing in an amount on the buyer broker agreement, but then you can't necessarily be negotiating that on the RPA. Or you're saying don't put in an amount on the buyer broker agreement and just negotiate it through the RPA.
I'm not talking about the agreement between your client, your brokerage, and you. I'm talking about there's a third piece of paper coming out in Colorado that is between the seller's brokerage and the buyer's brokerage.
Oh, geez. Okay.
To which the buyer and seller, neither of them is a party to that contract. So that's the little extra piece of paper here.
Okay.
What is being recommended, and I think it's a smart move through EXP, is buyers, agents, go negotiate your commission.
Right.
Yeah.
Period. Right. And then when you submit an offer, negotiate your commission to see how much of it you can get paid by the seller.
See, and what I see as a value here is that it makes everything negotiable, which is a value to an investor who's already playing that game.
We were already playing that game. That's right. That's
playing it for years, right? And so then the flip side of that conversation is, okay, seller's agent, commission is now a visibly negotiable item.
Right.
Now you have a fiduciary responsibility not to reveal it right off the bat, but to negotiate in the best interest of your client to pay out the least amount possible to save your client the most amount of money so that they end up netting the most at the end of the day when the house closes.
So I think that answers a lot of the questions for maybe the buyer who's like, how am I supposed to negotiate here? Or like, where's this conversation coming from? Whether that be buyer's agent or an investor buyer. My question is maybe more of a personal one, is like, how are we writing this listing agreement with the seller to have that kind of leeway? Like, what does that look like? Because we can't now say, hey, you're going to pay 6% and 3% is going to go here. And excuse me for even using percentages. But, that is the idea that used to happen. And now we can't do it that way. So what are we supposed to be doing?
So one of the things that I heard tossed out there is you put your numbers in, but you put up to whatever that total percentage is, because you may end up paying less than that. And for those of us that are lazy and don't want to go back and do an amendment, then again, down in your additional provisions, seller authorizes up to X amount be paid towards buyer's compensation. Seller agrees that X amount will be paid to their listing agent.
Man, I love legalese. Guys, if you're not speaking legalese, like get in on the picture. And some of the big words are up to or on or before or
Yes.
like those kinds of words. That's interesting because I'm surprised that they're allowing them say up to, for example, a 3% for a buyer's agent, that they're allowing them to even list it that way. But I guess obviously not list it that way, write the listing agreement that way. Just want to make sure I'm clarifying.
It's part of the negotiation. So what basically it's saying is, hey, we're agreeing we will potentially negotiate this amount to the other side, but we're not going to go above that.
Right.
That doesn't mean that we can't decide in the middle of negotiation that we're paying nothing.
Right.
We may decide the other hat is a pain in the, or the other side is a pain in the ass. And what we're all going to offer is 0. And, thank you for asking for 3.2%. Again, shouldn't say numbers, but I'm throwing a giant one out there. But no, thank you. Goodbye. See you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay. Now this is, I think, maybe the meat and potatoes of this entire conversation, because we know that this is going to be affecting it. And it's something that you and I deal with all the time, is that now that those negotiation pieces are in play, how do you, as a good listing agent who actually knows what could go as a cash value, who actually knows the numbers that will hit the MLS and sell, negotiate with a listing agent who might be receiving many different offers from agents who are just like, I promise you're not going to have to pay a buyer's commission, anything. And I'm going to get this listed for 200K above. I'm mocking you guys out there that are doing that, because if you are telling a seller that it can sell for more, I'm already mad at you, because you need to show comps. You need to be able to show proof that those are the right numbers. And Angela, I know you do that because we've talked about listing presentations. We've presented 2 sellers together before. So
I pull comps for all of my buyers for the houses they're putting offers in on.
Mhm.
I'm that agent. And I do it because, and for example, I had a client walk away from an offer because they got countered and they're like, we're not paying full price on the house. The house isn't worth it. It's too dated. And you need to know what those numbers are to know when to walk away, right? When this isn't the right deal. In Colorado, we're kind of in this weird space where suddenly we have a lot more inventory than we've had in eons here in Colorado, right? We're up to, during July, we had 2.5 months of inventory. Now we have, I think it's 1.7 months of inventory currently. And so when you're looking at those kinds of numbers in an environment where we have had less than 30 days of inventory for so long, and it's been so tight to make offers, you're suddenly kind of trending into this slightly more balanced market. And those agents that are telling their sellers that they can sell it for a ridiculous price and pay nothing are honestly doing their sellers a massive disservice, because what's going to happen is their house is going to sell. And at the end of the day, it's going to sell for a whole lot less with a whole lot more concessions than if they had priced it right to start with.
Agreed.
Absolutely. And really, I guess the way to combat that in your listing appointments is to show data. Like, here's what I know. Here's what's happening. Look at these other active listings that are just sitting. We want to keep those in mind too. And yeah, I just think that that's going to be a shift for sure in how people are presenting and how they're going under contract, and also how buyers are able to buy. Because you and I have had this conversation, Angela, but recently I had a closing with a buyer who, like, how do you buy a house with only $2,000? Let me show you. Like, I still am like, how did we pull that one off? But we did. And I'm so proud of that. It was one of my harder transactions. It took longer than it should have. But when I handed the man his keys, he cried, and I got to cry with him because it was hard, and yet he was proud of it. And that kind of buyer is now going to have a little bit more difficulty in an FHA or VA loan with those kinds of negotiations happening.
Yep.
I predict there's going to be more changes. It's just going to be that initial shift. So maybe say between now and the end of the year, or whatever, now in the spring, real estate's kind of a slow moving process for the most part, except if you're a fix and flipper or if you're wholesaling, then obviously you're out here kind of wheeling and dealing. But, the regulations and market shifts and, 90 days, 6 months worth of ARVs, it's a while, like time goes by. So it'll eventually settle itself. I think it was probably the right decision, although I do have a strong opinion about how NAR felt like they kind of threw us under the bus as, paying people to this, conglomerate that is one of the biggest lobbying conglomerates, on the Capitol Hill. And it's like, what did you guys just do? It seemed like some Karen called and got pissed off, and then all of a sudden ran it up the flagpole, and here we are. I'm like, how did this just happen? Did anybody have a say in anything? It was very strange in how it all showed up. However, these kinds of shifts and changes were probably due. And I hate to say this, I'm not going to be popular for saying it, but real estate is one of these industries where you can really just literally, I always laugh, say, fog a mirror and get a license, but it's too easy to get in and it's too easy to get out. And no one really cares and knows how hard it is to stay in it. And so this go around might just be the last hurrah, where the DRE doesn't really make it very difficult to get a license, where this is going to be more of a barrier to entry, because there's a lot of part-timers, there's a lot of, not taking it so serious, there's a lot of not longevity, like, oh, I'll just dabble in this and get out, and that's not really what this should be. This is somebody's biggest investment, whether they're only buying one home or they're an investor. And I've always really sat on the sidelines and been like, how is this even possible? How can someone just get their license or just get into real estate? It's kind of oddball if you really think about it. So, more regulations are coming, and most likely for wholesale this time around. Even though wholesaling has been around for decades, it's probably going to start to get more and more regulated because there's more and more people, with their hands in the pot. So as these regulations set in, then, the pendulum always swings. So there has to be something that kind of like, evens out in the middle, and that might take a year or two, who knows? So in the meantime, get skilled up and collaborate. Those are the two things to be concerned with, is next indicated actions.
Angela, I'll give you the last word on this one. But I see it as a positive. Like, how did it happen, if you will, in regards to Capitol Hill or whatever, but a definite positive in giving us more rules, regulations, things we need to follow, so that we are taking the absolute best care of a seller. Because what is crazy is that we are second to an attorney in being able to draft legal documents in real estate. And an attorney takes a lot more work to be able to get that license. It's a lot more work. Mm-hmm. So making sure that we're interviewing the right agents, finding agents like Angela who know what they're talking about, who have seen the good, bad, ugly in real estate, I think is definitely the takeaway here. But real estate will be forever. November, we'll be talking about whatever's going on in November that's affecting it. But really, thank goodness for real estate, because it's not the stock market. And that's pretty much my takeaway.
Well, and I think you're on the right path, right? And it's the whole idea that everybody knew something needed to change, but there was nothing pushing that change along. And then here comes this lawsuit, right? Where everybody loses big, for lack of a better way to put it. And what has come out of it are some changes. I think the fact that you do need to have an agreement before you show a buyer properties. We've always been supposed to do it, but none of us have done it, or most of us haven't, right?
Right.
But now it's all up. You have to do it, or NAR says, your local MLS says, you can't show any houses that are listed on the MLS if you don't have it. And I think that that's a good thing, because now you as an agent know exactly what's going on and where that person's head is at when they're looking at real estate. They also know exactly what the fees are going to be, and there's no mystery to what that is. Whether you're going to be a concierge agent or you're going to be a discount agent, they know where they're going to fall in that, right? And they can make that decision. I think the second part of that is, I think it makes us as sellers agents more financially and fiduciary, with more fiduciary responsibility in protecting the amount that gets paid out as part of that commission process and protecting those sellers from overpaying. And so I think you are going to see a lot of changes. I do think that for the most part, you're going to see that, yes, sellers pay less out of pocket on the whole. I also think you're going to see that while buyers have to pick up the difference, the amount that buyers agents get paid is also going to drop and be commensurate with the amount of work, assuming that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing as buyers agents and making sure that people are qualified before they show houses.
Amen.
Guys, this is why I brought my all-time favorite person. You're welcome. I know you're saying it. You might not have put it in the chat or comments yet, but I know you're saying it. So, guys, please go follow the amazing Angela. She's got some awesome content. She's also just an amazing person to know. Where should they go follow you so that they can just get more Angela in their life?
They can go to my YouTube channel, which is Tolar Angela. My name is backwards on that one. Or they can actually follow me on Instagram as well.
Perfect. Is that at Angela Tolar on Instagram?
That's a really good question. I am really bad.
No, she's not.
It's at Angela_Tolar.
There you go.
Beautiful. Perfect. That's locked in. It's always going to be here. We're about to sign off, y'all. We're always here on Tuesdays at 2 MST to talk about all things real estate, all things investing, and honestly, just shoot the because that's what we do here. So thank you, Angela. I appreciate your time. I'm sure we'll have you back for other topics. And until next time, bye, y'all.
Thank you.
Bye, and thank you so much.